all the conferences that I went to last year, there was always at least one, if not more, sessions on this topic. So what I want to kind of open with is just to say I'm not an expert on this. This is just kind of some of my findings as I've researched and become curious about what this means, and just kind of wanted to present some information to get you guys thinking about if it's something that you might want to do in your course. It's definitely an option. There's some, they've come a long way in the offerings that they have and the ease of finding those. But I will say it's like anything, and as we go through this, you know, one of the thoughts you might have is that's going to take a little bit of time because you do have to do a little digging, you do have to do a little research, and you know, so kind of as I was preparing for this, one of the main things that I got from people who have dove headfirst into using OERs is to make sure you have enough time to invest in doing this right. So we'll talk a little more about that as we get into it. But when you guys think of open educational resources, what does that mean to you? What is that? What do you think that is?
Well, good grief, the first thing I thought was it was searching out on the web.
And that's part of it, yeah, that is part of it. So most of this material you're going to find is on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, total access.
Okay, total access, meaning
anybody can see it.
Okay, anybody can see it. Yes, that's part of it. Anything else come to mind? All right, and you know, as I was kind of diving into this topic, I kind of think, you know, it's a little broader than just textbooks. A lot of people tend to think of it just textbooks, but there's a lot more out there. And you could probably even kind of put into this apps you might use that are free, or like the Kahoot, the Pull Everywhere. I mean, I just look at it as anything that's kind of out there for people to use. And so this kind of explains what in the OER world, it's kind of the definition of OER. So these are open licensed educational materials, and I listed them out there. Anything from textbooks to lectures to full courses you can find, videos, etc. And kind of I think of it as, you know, why reinvent the wheel if the wheel's already out there? Okay, and we'll see that, you know, in a lot of cases you don't have to use the resource exactly as it is, and so it gives you a little bit of freedom to do, you know, kind of make it your own, so to speak. Most of the time they're used for teaching, learning, research, etc. Hence the word educational in the title. And the big thing down at the bottom is free. That they're free. And I want to remind you of something I always think of when I do volunteer work. So typically when you do volunteer work, are you getting paid to do it? No, it's usually your volunteering time for free. And that's what I wanted you to think about, because I always tell people when I'm volunteering, like, you get what you pay for. So, and if you're not paying me anything, you get what I give you. And that may not always be the way you want it done. It may not always look like what you want it to look like, but when you have free help, you know, you get what you pay for. And I want you to kind of think of that as we look through, you know, kind of dive into the subject more, that it is free. And remember what free means. You didn't pay for it. So it may not always be perfect. And also that goes back to that time commitment. You may have to do a little research on your own to find out how accurate that whatever you're looking at is, and, you know, kind of put your own 2 cents worth into it. So we'll kind of remind you of that as we go through this, that it is free. So free is not always perfect, right? And it's not like you can return it, right? Because it's free. So keep that in mind as we look at this. Okay, let's go to the next slide. There's just a short video just to get us thinking. This was actually created back in 2012, so this movement towards open educational resources really isn't new. It's been around for quite a while, and I just thought this was a real kind of short, sweet video that gets you thinking, you know, how you might want to use these. So let me play here.
There is no question that our world is evolving. Our tools, our global community, and above all, the way that we communicate. It can be argued that the highest form of communication is education, the passing of knowledge through time. New forms of communication are illuminating new opportunity for educators and students alike. This opportunity is why open education resources matter. Open education resources are teaching, learning, and research tools that reside in the public domain. They are completely free for use and repurposing. Let's face it, ideas and knowledge are spreading faster than traditional forms of learning can keep up with. This raises problems like relevance of material and cost effectiveness for schools. Wouldn't it be revolutionary to have a sustainable form of education that is relevant, constantly updating, and completely free? The revolution is here. Users of open educational resources have absolutely free access to full courses, course materials, textbooks, streaming videos, software, and other priceless tools. In addition, users have complete permission to revise, reuse, remix, and redistribute all open educational resources. Imagine the classroom of the future. Biology students in Haiti can wirelessly study tidal patterns of the northern Atlantic Ocean. History students in California can take a street view tour of historic Gettysburg. Textbooks can wirelessly update with the most recent information free of charge. These aren't educational pipe dreams or fluffy notions. These are very real tools that need to be shared and implemented everywhere. Experience education the way it is intended, with relevance and community. Experience the revolution of open educational resources.
So that just kind of gives you, a little pep talk about this. Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing I was thinking of was like Wikipedia, because it's constantly updated by numerous different authors. And then there's like Dr. Axe is one that I can think of that constantly has free education out there, but there, that's how he sells his products.
Right.
Is through all that free education. So that's some of what this is.
That's a good point, yes. And so there might be, again, it goes back to that word free. So you have to remember that like Wikipedia is not always perfect, and scholarly wise, I think a lot of people kind of frown on Wikipedia because anybody can author it. And keep in mind, somebody might give you something for free because they want something in return for you to buy their books or whatever. But there's a little more to it than just that. Those are great points. So, and things we want to remember, because it goes back to the thing I said at the beginning. Free is not always perfect, right? And so we may, you may have to really check stuff out to make sure that it meets the criteria that you want it to meet.
I used some very awkward early stage forms of this. I think back when I was teaching high school drama, I would do virtual tours of like Greek theaters that have been restructured, and you can't go see it, but we can look at it through a virtual tour.
Sure.
And they were a little bit awkward and
Not
sketchy
perfect,
at times, but that we're talking about in the 90s.
And it was better than not having it.
Right.
Right. So yeah.
But they could actually see it and put it in 3D almost and tour it that way.
With our Google Expedition, we have some of that. It's similar, that wasn't actually free, but similar.
I've used it to tour galleries, art galleries and stuff too.
Right. Okay, so let me click on there's the next slide. Okay, so some of the benefits. So why might you want to consider this? Well, the first thing there is it's customizable. So if you buy, let's say a textbook, for example, you're kind of stuck with that textbook, right? You may like chapter 1, but hate chapter 5. You might like what it says in certain parts of chapter 2, but not the whole chapter. And so some of these open educational resources you'll see allow you to kind of maybe take a chapter from this book and combine it into the book of your dreams. It's less cost to students because they don't have to buy the book. And a lot of research is out there that shows students a lot of times forego buying your textbook because A, they don't want to spend the money on it. B, they don't have the money to spend on it. They're barely making it through tuition costs. And they don't necessarily use it as you would expect them to in all cases, right? There was one comment I saw in a video about OER that said this instructor, she wasn't sure how this textbook she kind of created online was going with her students until she got an email from a student that thanked her immensely for not making her buy a $200 textbook that she never used because she was a single mom with 3 kids. And that $200 she would have spent on a textbook really came in handy for other things in life. So, I know we don't always think in terms of our students, but as far as like cost per se, but think about that. That does save them some money. There's more choices and variety out there because instead of maybe going with one certain publisher, you have access to lots of different things. And then the last one, as we talked about, is they're free. Okay, so let's look at some of the places that you might find some materials to use. And these are definitely not all of them. I would say these are some of the bigger ones, but like anything, Google it. Okay, because there are like specific sites for specific disciplines, which I didn't put all those out here because this is kind of a general discussion instead of specific. But if you go out there, you can find things. You'll be surprised what you can find if you just put OER in your Google search. But these are some of the big ones, and Misty will be sharing these slides with you after the presentation, so you'll have access to these. The first one is the OER comments. I'm going to click on that just so we can take a look. And this is a repository of documents that are kind of kept by this group. This was kind of, I think, one of the kind of flagship, if you want to say, groups that kind of got this all started. And there's more than just documents out here. There's actual groups you can join and hubs of certain subjects if you're interested in kind of keeping up with what's going on in certain disciplines. And I would encourage you not only to take a look at some of the materials that are out there, but to just go out to this website and just look around. So if you're curious about learning more about OER, this is a great website. But you can also search, they have a pretty easy way to search for materials as well. So there's this search right on their front page where you can say what you're looking for. You can pick a subject, education level, so it goes all the way from preschool to adult education. And then you can choose different standards that you might be looking for or just regular standard. You can also do an advanced search. So if you click there, that narrows it down just a little bit. So you can put keywords to look for, standards, and then you have a lot more to choose from in the subject areas here and material types. And it just kind of is a more specific way of searching. So let's just say, I don't know, let's say I want to look in something in arts and humanities. So let's just put it kind of real vague and broad, and let's do a search and see what comes up. And when I do that, because I didn't put a grade level, you see I have a second grade, I have a kindergarten, there's 10,000 results out there. All right, so I can narrow that down somewhat. Here's some different categories I might narrow it down to. So like maybe I'll just narrow it down to art history, see where that takes us. And now we're at 528 results. I probably want to narrow it down by education level, because I'm pretty sure we don't need kindergarten out here unless we're doing a class for teachers who might teach kindergarten. Then you might want to do that. So let's just say, let's do college upper division and just kind of see. So our 10,000 results get narrowed down to 47. All right, and you can narrow it a little bit more if you wanted to. I mean, it's just like any search. You can narrow it however you want. And like this first one, there's Durer's self-portrait from 1498. If anybody has rated it, you will see green stars here. So when you see them all like that, because if you kind of scroll down the list, you'll see, wow, all these are 5 stars. Well, they'd be green if they had been rated like this one. So this one is a 3-star. And when you look at the like short answer of this, it'll give you a kind of a preview of what you're going to see. So this is 20th century art. And we can click on more. It'll give us a little bit more information about what we would find there, the subject type, the material type, and who provided it. So in this case, it's the Saylor Foundation. Conditions of use says read the fine print. So let's click on that one. Let's just look at it and see. So here, one of the nice things about this particular website is most things that are generated as OER are put under a Creative Commons license. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute if you're not familiar with that. I know some of you probably are. But this will tell you, like this one is Creative Commons Attribution 3.0. And if I click on that, it will take me, well, this one doesn't work. It should take me to a page that shows what that means. And then down here, if there's any special conditions, then we can click on read the fine print. It may not take me anywhere. We'll see. Yeah, I was gonna say on this one it doesn't. We'll look at one that does. But it kind of gives you an idea up front is how you can use this, right? And this, also on this particular one, it tells you kind of here, you're welcome to share, remix, and adapt this course under the terms of Creative Commons and blah, blah, blah. Okay, now I'm afraid when I click view resource, it's going to give me that same message. Let's just see if
And
that's
it's not
true.
this website, Saylor. They're the ones.
Right, it's this, yeah. And that's why I say when it's free, sometimes you get it. Well, there it is. Okay, so that linked work. But then here's a syllabus for 20th century art. And you can kind of scroll through, you can see what learning outcomes they have, the requirements. So this is an entire course that somebody has built, and they've got units out here, and if you click on the units, let's see if they're so there's unit 3, Futurism, German Expressionism, and Brancusi, I think is how you pronounce that, Mike?
I have used sites like that with the types of courses I teach and go out there and find
Right,
information about subjects I'm using or even ideas for lessons and assignments.
okay, right. And that's what I was gonna say, even if you just got an idea from here, you don't necessarily have to use, verbatim what they have. So that's one example. Let's go back here. There's another example, I think this top one up here. This is a video. So if we click on this, let's click on this and go into it. So this shows the Creative Commons with attribution, non-commercial, share alike. We'll talk about what all that means in a minute. And this is what it really should have done on the other one. It takes you to this, so it spells out, like if you want to use this, here's the parameters around use, because it is somebody else's work, so we want to make sure we're using it correctly. Okay, legally, that's a really good idea. But
sometimes you might want to use just a segment of it.
You might want to use a segment, right? It tells you who the copyright holders are in this case. It gives you this little symbol of Creative Commons, which we'll talk about more in a minute. And then the use guidelines says you can remix and share. And if we click on that, it will kind of explain to you what remix and share means, which this is the same website it took you to up here. All right, so this is a video. So if I want to view it, I would just click on View Resource and hit play. And I can view this resource.
We're in the in
you know,
Madrid.
see.
And we're looking at
I
Albert
don't
Doerr's
we don't really need
self-portrait,
to,
1498.
we don't really need to see the whole thing. But I will say, you know, since it is a video, what's one thing we've kind of been talking a lot about lately with videos? Closed captioning. So if you're going to use this in your course, you know, you got to make sure it's closed captioned right? In this case, it is, I didn't bring that up, but it is closed captioned. So, you know, maybe you're doing something on this in your course, and this might be great for your students to use. And you have a really easy place to find it. Yes.
If it's not closed captioned, they could use this Cielo interactive media player to get it captioned. So they
Right.
can still use it.
Right, we just have to come through. And so, yeah, so remember, we do have that that service, Cielo, and if it's a video we don't own, such as this, that needs closed captioning, it'll do it. We'll get it done. So you don't just have to say, oh, this one doesn't have closed captioning, I can't use it. You can. All right, so that's one. That's OER comments. The next one is specifically the textbook site. So it's collegeopentextbooks.org. And, you know, again, remember these are free, so that, you know, maybe every subject isn't out there that we would ever teach on. But you can just come out here and search the textbook listings, and you can sort by subject, by recent reviews, and accessibility reviews, because that's an important thing. But let's just go by subject, and let's see what they have out there on chemistry. All right, so here's all the books they have out there on chemistry. Again, do you see why time is of essence? You know, you don't want to be making a quick decision if I need a chemistry textbook. There's several to go through. Well, let's just click on this one and see what it looks like. So this is the chemistry hub, and here's the chapters. So chapter 1 is an introduction to chemistry. I can click view on that and then see, you know, what it has, what it looks like. This one has some reading in it you can assign, which you probably would do that in Moodle, but there's some quizzes, there's a PowerPoint template. I mean, you don't always get all of that with a free textbook, but you can. So even with paid versions, we get that. And some of your free versions will have that as well. All right, so you would just search, find what you're looking for, and, you know, just go through these, see which one might fit your need. And they all look a little different because, again, it's free. So not everything is going to look exactly alike. You can see this is kind of the PDF version. Maybe this one might be a little bit more difficult to manipulate or to make it your own than the first one we saw. All right, so that's that one. There's also one called Merlot, which is a Cal State website that it's like a repository for information. And I think if you go to our library databases, we have access to this through there as well. And you can search Merlot. I find on this one, the advanced search is a little nicer because I want to put more in than just one word. But let's just say keywords. Let's say we were looking for something in finance. Probably don't have a title, URL. And discipline, I'm going to say business. And material type, let's say I'm looking, I don't know, maybe a case study. And I could say what technical format I wanted it in, my audience. Let's see, I'm going to say college upper division. And, you know, it can narrow it down by those two, but let's just search and just see if anything comes up. And, you know, sometimes when you're searching on these sites, there might not be anything, you know. I mean, it's kind of, you know, hit or miss. This is telling me there's other things I can search for, so I'm just like, got it. All right, and then I get these things. So I get these resources. There's 4 resources shown. So this first one, compare financial systems around the world. I don't know, maybe that's what I need. So I could click on that and then just kind of go through and look at what it is, what has somebody, you know, provided. This also has ratings. It doesn't look like this one has been rated by users yet. The editor has given it a pretty high rating, but there's no comments or anything. But if there was, you could see them there. And then if I want to go to this, I would just click go to material, And here it is. So then they have like private sector credit and business credit. So if I'm teaching finance, I would look through that. Maybe that's what I need. Maybe it's not. All right, and then the last one is another textbook, this OpenStack.org. You hear that a lot in the OER circles, and it's just another place to find textbooks. So you can they have a higher education place, and you can search by your subjects and find that if that's what you're looking for. So again, these are definitely not all of the websites that are out there that you can find OERs in. But if you want to get started, I think these are pretty diverse in their offerings, and it might be a good place to start looking. And I noticed some of y'all are writing, so I'll just wait a minute if you need a chance to write.
Yeah, I'm gonna cruise through them and see what I can find for nursing.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I found that that's a real issue with them purchasing books because of the money. They just don't have it.
Yeah.
right. And probably like me, I took courses in college, and I bought this really expensive textbook and used it for like 2 chapters. And then you're thinking, why did I buy this? So, if they've had experiences like that, that can also kind of taint their view of it too. So.
But it makes it really hard from my point of view, whenever I'm trying to help them and they don't have a resource, because I find that they just Google everything.
Right. And Google's a powerful thing.
And I
It
look
doesn't
at this and I go, what the heck? Where did you get that?
Kind of like 3rd grade math. Like, thank goodness for Google, because I have no idea what a buddy in the basement is. I learned. That's what we used to call carrying. Carrying over. Okay. All right. So let's talk about when you find something you want to use. This is what they call the 5 R's of OER. So what can you do with it? And I want to preface this by saying some of this depends on how the person has set the Creative Commons license up, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. So look at this kind of as in general, but know that sometimes based on how they've allowed you to use it, you may not be able to do everything on this list. But the first one is retain. It just means you're able to have a copy of this and for your use. Reuse means you can use it and reuse it in your course or for whatever you might need to use it for. Revise means you can take what they have and make it your own, as I like to say. And remix means you can take parts of one and parts of another and remix and make your own. And then redistribute means you can, of course, distribute it to your students or, your talk or whatever you want to do with it. So kind of what you see on this list is they're pretty flexible. So, you're not stuck with the way it looks when you find it. You can mix it up a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about Creative Commons. So like I said earlier, most OERs are created under the Creative Commons licensing. And like we saw on the OER Commons website, this is kind of the license and what you might see as a license. And I'm going to click on that. So when you get the PowerPoint, if you'll click on that picture, it'll take you to the Creative Commons website. So if you want to learn more about Creative Commons, if you're not familiar with it, and you want to see, what it's all about, that takes you directly to their website. All right, so let's talk about what these things mean on a license. So of course the CC just means Creative Commons. But these are things you might see. So the first one is the little symbol with the person. And that just really means you need to give credit or attribution to the person that created it. And most every Creative Commons license, they want, people like, if I worked on this, I want you to give me some credit for it, right? So most of them, you'll see this little person. The next one is kind of the backwards C, and that is for share alike. So it tells you they're willing to let others copy, distribute, display, perform, and modify their work as long as they distribute any modified work on the same terms. So in other words, if it's for a chemistry class, then you're using it for chemistry class and not using it for selling some type of chemistry equipment or something like that. So it just means keep it in the same context as it was created for, which is, in our world, is generally for education. The next one is the $sign with a mark through it, non-commercial. It just means you can't make money off of it. So in other words, they don't want you using it in your commercial, or they don't want you to use it as part of your sales pitch or your logo, something like that. They don't want you making any money off of it. And then the last one, the equal sign, means that they do not want you to modify their work. And most of these, if you kind of read the last sentence on most of these, it says if you're going to, you need to get their permission. So kind of keep in mind, even if it has this no derivatives part in the license, if you feel like there's something you really want to change, you can ask their permission and see if they'll let you. But if they don't, then you got to leave it the way it is. Okay, so those are what the symbols mean. And so if I kind of go back to this other slide, so you can kind of see, like this particular one says you have to give attribution, you can't make money off of it, and you need to share it in the same type of space. And most of what I've looked at least on the OERs, that's usually what they have. And you don't see a lot of the equal sign where they don't want you to change it, because if they've created something under Creative Commons, usually they created it knowing that people might change it. So, okay, any questions on that part?
What do you think is the motive that drives open resource material like this? Did you run across anything that explains that?
I think, early on you could have, because their MOOCs are kind of not as trendy as they used to be, I think, because of some of the lawsuits and stuff that have happened because of them. I really think it's just that idea of fair and equal education for all. I might be wrong, but a lot of what I've seen in my research is that's the point that it's driving home, is that everyone has access to learn. Now, whether that's exactly right or not, I'm not sure. That's just Laura's perspective.
Laura, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
That's Christy, by the way, guys.
Hi, everybody. I look really bad, so I'm not going to let you see me. But anyway, I was going to add, I've been on several grants where we got, free money, from grant money, to create content. And part of the grant was that we had to create either a Creative Commons license on it, or we had to put it in somewhere like Merlot where everyone could use it. So that's another big motivation, is to get money. So you can use that grant money to create it, and then your institution benefits from it. But then they also want you to share the wealth, share the content, not the wealth. You keep the money, and it has to be up. And sometimes they'll ask you to maintain it, for a certain number of years. So you have to edit it as it needs to be updated and so forth.
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
Thank you. I did not know that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
I just think this is great when you're having to build a course from scratch, because you really don't have to reinvent the wheel now. There's so many.
There's things out there that you might be able to use. I agree. Okay, so let's talk about attribution. So we talked about, most Creative Commons licenses require you to give attribution. And this first link is this long website about attribution. So we'll kind of load here, and you can read all through that if you want to make sure you're giving proper attribution, or if you want to make sure you're doing it right, etc. So I'm not going to read that to you because honestly it's kind of boring, but I figure you won't remember anyway, so I'm just going to give you the resource, and when you need to attribute something to someone, this is one place you can go. But within that website, I also found this Attribution Builder, and this is kind of like something like EasyBib or something if you use that for your building like a reference for your paper. And this Attribution Builder helps you build your attribution for these Creative Commons licenses. And so it's kind of cool. So the title, it just tells you what is the title of your content. So let's just say I found a textbook on business finance. Probably didn't spell that right, I can't see. Okay. If I have a URL, I can include that. And notice as I type that in down here, it starts building my attribution. And it even builds HTML code. So if you're having to put that into something that requires HTML, you're going to have the code for it when you get done. The author, so let's just say, I'm just going to say I authored it. And you can see it added me down there. The organization, and I'll just put I'm with SNU, and etc. So you kind of see how it builds. Then over here, I can select what type of license it has. So let's say that I have this one. So I want it to be attribution and share alike. That's my main thing. I don't care if you make money off of it or not. So I'm going to click on that. And then notice in my attribution, it's going to link to that that Creative Commons website that tells anybody what that means. So there's no confusion if somebody's using this, what this was used under. So that's kind of cool. Then you can just copy it. You can copy the HTML code if you need to. And then your attribution should be correct based on whatever that person has said they want you to use. So I thought, wow, that's a nice little handy tool. And then you covered yourself because you attributed the name, but to the author, and then whatever type of license they're under. And you've given whoever is going to look at your work, you've given them that information so they know. And if the person that created it, Laura Cook, came back and looked to make sure you did it right, and she would see that you did. So that's in the slides as well. So I think that's kind of a nice tool. Then you know you got it right. Okay. Don't forget about accessibility. So I know we've talked in a lot of our training sessions this last school year about accessibility. So again, because these are free, it doesn't mean they're perfect. And we still want to make sure they meet all of our accessibility requirements, like we talked a little bit ago about closed captioning. And so in the slideshow, I've also included some checklists for the WCAG, I think is how you say that. And I would just say WCAG, but I was trying to be like I knew. Okay, there's a section 508 checklist. There's links to, I'm not going to go into those because we've seen those before. And then I also included, I think some of you have been here when Rob Carr from AbleTech has talked to us, and he sent us a nice resource page with all sorts of accessibility checkers and things to look for. So I just wanted to remind you that, if you are using these, don't forget that they need to be accessible, and you may have to, part of your revising of it may be to make it accessible. So don't, just because the way that whoever has created it has presented it isn't accessible doesn't mean that it's okay for you to use it like that, because we still want to make sure everything's accessible like we would if we were just, making our own content. So just a reminder there. And then the last thing, I found two really good resources. So these two are other places to start. So if you don't want to just start immediately searching, OU actually has a really good full web page with lots of information on it about OER. So, you know, I kind of found this at the end of my research, so I didn't use a whole lot of what they have because some of it's, you know, repeats of stuff I found. But I was like, wow, you know, they have a really good starting point here. And the other one is called OpenOregon.org, and this was also a great resource. And they have some workshops. They have some recordings of stuff you might want to check out. If you search them on YouTube, they have some really good videos that kind of explain different facets of OER. So those two, I think, have been the most inclusive resources I found. You can find little things here and there, but those two I felt like were really, really comprehensive and good. So, all right. Any questions, comments? What do you guys think?
Well, this was very informative for me, and it just answered everything that I wanted to
Good.
be able to give to my students, especially for the ones that don't have the money. I'm going to go research through those textbook sites and see what I can come up with for nursing.
Okay, great. And I think that's just it, getting the conversation started and knowing that this is an option, right? It doesn't mean you have to, but at least you know that there's some options out there.
And if I can find it, that means they're going to be learning it the right way.
And you can help them because you have what they have, right? Yes.
Yeah, I know. Because a lot of times, any medical information that you find through Google is just going to be based for the general public.
Not necessarily for education. That's correct.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, you know, because mostly that's what people in general are looking for, but not specifically.
But not somebody that's learning to be a professional.
Right. And we want nurses to know how to do things right. We want them to be well trained.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
I have a slightly related question, and Misty and I have talked about this before, in terms of with all these educational resources that are open, have you all, and maybe Misty, you may have thought about this some since we talked about it some time ago, where does a person go who wants to design an open course? You know, in terms of, you know, we talked to Misty, tried to give me some information, and she gave me some links on Google Classroom. But then the restriction there was that you have to have some linked, you can't just do that with a private Google account.
Yeah.
You have to be hooked in someplace.
At OER Commons,
Uh-huh.
there is a create area. So you can click on create and you can do open author, a lesson builder, or module. And I honestly haven't built anything on here.
Will you click on start building, just so we can see?
I think, as I said, I think you have to have, I think that's where I kind of stopped. You have to have an account, but it might be worth checking out.
I mean, it just would seem to me that, yeah, and maybe, I know Moodle is open access in a sense, but yet even most things with Moodle seem somehow still linked to institutional accounts.
Right, they are. Like, I don't think you can share.
You can't just go open a Moodle account as an individual. And I'm thinking, because some of the things that I do are things that could be beneficial beyond the institution, beyond the online courses that I teach. There are things that could be helpful to the churches that we serve, and that sort of thing. If I could just, if I could design a course, say, it would be comparable to a course that we offer for credit, but I could use a lot of what I know in an open source kind of course.
Right.
That even church relations could be able to say, here's a way you can link and do this, and we can do offerings for people that way. But I'm just struggling to find the best something that is reasonably accessible and that's free to be able to build a short course. I've got a couple things.
So I have a little bit of information about that.
Thank you.
So, I don't know if you can create your own private Moodle site, but Blackboard Canvas, Schoology, a lot of those. As a matter of fact, there's even the MOOCs, learning management systems like edX and Coursera. You can create your own courses and you can put them up there. And what you do is you get a link to that course and you send it to whomever that you want to join the course. And then they click on that link, they create an account, which is free, and then they become students in your course. So that's how MOOCs work. You can also, like Laura showed you on the OER Commons, OER, and then Merlot, you can create a free account and then you can put your whole course in there. It's a little bit harder. You know, students can't take it from there, but if you'd like to share it with other faculty to use in their courses, then you would do it through one of these repositories. But yeah, go to like Blackboard, I think it's called Course Sites. You can just Google that. And then Canvas, they have free accounts. Usually they'll have like a limit to how many students you can have in it. But then once that fills up, you can just create another site. And actually, no, that's different.
Oh, is it?
I could be wrong. I can't remember what it's called, but it's Blackboard. I have one. I haven't been in it in a while, but yeah, they're free. Usually those big LMS vendors, they want teachers to try out their LMS, so they'll go to their institution and say, hey, I want this LMS for our school. So they'll let you create free courses there. But yeah, Blackboard, Canvas. I don't know about D2L, but Schoology is another one. I can send y'all, when Misty sends out the link to this, maybe I can add that information after I look it up.
Yeah, that'd be great, because here's Merlot, and it does say create materials with Content Builder, so that's similar to what OER had.
Excellent. Those are, I've jotted those down. If we get links to some of those, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, so we'll get those when Misty sends out the links to the
Yeah.
presentation and stuff. Yeah, great question.